Gam Ganapataye Namaha, Shri Krishna Parabrahmane Namaha. A man is getting troubles because of the three-letter ego, ego. It controls the person to struggle in one's life. One has to control his ego, otherwise, ego will control him. Each and every small thing also can be treated as big. That is the reason why this type of ego kills the men. Nowadays, even from kid to old man, everybody suffers not with cancer. Cancer like ego. It is more than cancer. Cancer is curable. Ego is incurable. But there is remedies. Through spirituality, one can control the ego. Therefore, we have to declare spiritual war against ego. To subdue the power of ego, we have to declare the war through spirituality. To avoid it, we have to take some steps. When you have smart approach, then you can little bit control the ego. At the same time, if a person thinks of the difference beyond good and bad, basing on this, he can control it. Life's purpose is not to distance the people who are our own due to the reason of our ego. At the same time, it is less drama, more dharma principle can be followed to subdue it. In whatever the way, it's one of the saddest and bad habit of possessing the habit of ego. So we have to think of to wipe out entirely, to uproot totally the ego. Basing on this topic, now I would like to bring to you spiritual war against ego. Let us start with prayer. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Western society is degenerating before our very eyes. Our bad collection karma, born from the seeds of unjust and immoral actions, has come home to roost. The Western world's long standing crusade to plunder indigenous cultures and the earth through its predatory communal schemes has set off a series of moral crises that humanity has rarely seen before. One could point a finger at the catastrophic onset to eliminate change. The rampant militarization of the globe, the shocking frequency of mass violent events, and the worsening opioid drug epidemic to demonstrate a society's internal collapse. The signs of such an impending breakdown are becoming more obvious to us all. Less obvious are the root causes and hopeful solutions for it. Now, more than at any other juncture in recent history, the one thing that defines Western culture is its glaring absence of spirit, love, and wisdom. Western civilization guiding ethos appear to be that of ego, division, and ignorance. The illusionary ideologies of consumerism and nihilism have been emphasized as natural expression of our nature. Sadly, positive end goals for our species like universal humanitarian, ecological unity, and world peace are deemed impossible to attain. If we listen to the talking heads speak of our politicians and media, it can be tempting to give in to the negativity that pervades the world today. However, if we all do as a counterculture icon Timothy Leary suggested a half century ago when he famously said, "Turn on, tune in, drop out." We may ignore all the negativity and intuitively recognize that we, as one human family, are participants in a metaphysical war between light and dark forces, the essence of which are spirit and ego. Typically, when we hear the word war, we may think of a conquering army, innocent people killed, or the awful images of physically and emotionally broken veterans returning home from battle. However, in metaphysical reality, the meaning of war deepens. Metaphysically speaking, one could interpret all worldly phenomenon as manifestation from the spiritual plane. In the end, all attempts to interpret reality are personal and subjective. An argument could be made that we are all just actors in an incomprehensibly cosmic screenplay. This belief points to a world where we have all been divinely assigned unique roles in physical form in accordance with our karma. We assume these roles in a way that reflects the present interaction of all contending forces in the universe and their quest to achieve balance. In our culture of black and white, dualities, we tend to dismiss the unitive nature of seeming opposites. In reality, dark is needed to bring light. Evil must be realized to know the meaning of good. One must first be ignorant to be wise, and all of us must transcend the vanity of ego before we can taste the sparkling springs of pure spirit. In a metaphysical sense, then war is not strictly a conflict of opposing forces that takes place outside us. Rather, war is also a contest between the prevailing forces of nature within. This inner war is akin to the kind described in the epoch Hindu text that Bhagavad Gita, a spiritual war against the ego. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, the divine being of wisdom and compassion, instructs his faithful disciple Arjuna on how to achieve self realization. From the onset of this incredibly beautiful and moving scripture, it is clear that Krishna equates the pursuit of self realization with the surrender of one's own ego before that spirit behind the forces of the nature. All those who take refuge in me, whatever their birth, race, sex, or caste, will attain the same goal. This realization can be attained even by those whom society scorns. Therefore, having been born in this transient and forlorn world, give all your love to me. Fill your mind with me. Love me, serve me, worship me always. Seeking me in your heart, you will at last be united with me. Arjuna represents a perfect disciple through his unwavering faith and devotion to Krishna. Yet Krishna still cautions this great warrior about the pitfalls on the path of self realization. In order to break free from the hellish grip of ego, one must first learn how to still their mind through meditation and cultivate an attitude of detachment from the fruits of one's action. On his first point, Krishna is crystal clear as to why all sincere spiritual aspirants should try to practice meditation to achieve inner truth and peace. The supreme reality stands revealed in the consciousness of those who have conquered themselves. Those who aspire to the state of yoga should seek the self in inner solitude through meditation. With the body and mind controlled, they should constantly practice one pointedness, free from expectations and attachment to material possessions. When meditation is mastered, the mind is unwavering like the flame of a lamp in a windless place. In the still mind, in the depths of meditation, the self reveals itself. Beholding the self by means of the self, an aspirant knows the joy and the peace of complete fulfillment. On Krishna's second point, he explains to Arjuna that devoting one's life to the path of selfless service is both the highest calling of mankind and the surest path to self realization. Sacred creativity. In order to selflessly serve and fulfill one's dharma or karmic duty, all serious men and women on the path of spirit must first renounce the fruits of their actions. In other words, all beings must learn to act without expectation of worldly rewards or acknowledgments. Every selfless act, Arjuna is born from Brahman, the eternal, infinite Godhead. Brahman is present in every act of service. All life turns on this law. Those who violate it, indulging the sense for their own pleasure and ignoring the needs of others, have wasted their life. You have the right to work, but never to the fruit of work. Karmanyevadikaraste maphaleshu kadachana. The ignorant work for their own profit. Arjuna, the wise work for the welfare of the universe without thought for themselves. Perform all work carefully, guided by compassion. So we need to care. As a culture, we cling to all the external pleasures of the world that Krishna warned Arjuna about. The game of today is wealth, power, and fame. We play to it enhance our image and name. Our culture's obsession with pursuing selfish, materialistic desires just creates more misery for the world. Our culture's obsession with pursuing selfish, materialistic desire just creates misery for the world. Two times repeated should be noticed. When you remove the essence of a sacred from life and assign it to a commercial value, what deeper elements remain? If the world's rainforest disappear and endangered species go extinct. Who cares as long as Western logging and mining corporations maximize profits and more wealthy businessmen grow richer? Who cares if 1 million civilians die from another senseless war? As long as the pockets of national leaders and oil investors grow farther, then the horrors of war are justified. Who cares if thousands of young men and women die on the streets from opioid overdoses as long as there is money to be made off others' addictions? Krishna cares, and deep down, I believe we all do too. Like all great saints from every spiritual tradition, Krishna's message is one of peace and transcendence. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna hands us with the spiritual weapons we need to successfully wage war on our egos. We are all far more capable of evolving in the spirit of oneness than we give ourselves credit for. Each day upon waking, we have a choice. Who will we decide to listen to today? Our true and higher self or our ego? The days we decide to listen to the true self are usually the ones where we feel as though we are living our purpose and abiding in our true nature. The days we decide to listen to the ego are usually the ones where we face the most difficulty and life can seem a little like a battlefield, a guidebook to life. The Bhagavad Gita is one of India's ancient texts derived from the epic poem Mahabharata. Throughout history, this still stands as the longest poem to have been written with over 1 lakh slokas or over 2 lakhs verses. Although only a part of this huge text, the Bhagavad Gita is perhaps one of the most important and highly revered yogic texts ever to have been written. Texts like the Upanishads and the Dhammapada are also part of this epic poem, but it is Bhagavad Gita which is often cited as one that holds the key to personal information. As the third of classics, the Bhagavad Gita is a map and a guidebook. It gives us a systematic overview of the territory of life, shows various approaches to the summit with their benefits and pitfalls, offers recommendations, tells us what to pack and what to leave behind. More than either of the other, it gives a sense of a personal guide. It asks and answers the questions that you or I might ask questions not about philosophy or mysticism, but about how to live life effectively in a world of challenge and change. Now, the story, relevance, and symbolism. The whole story of Bhagavad Gita takes place on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, upon which its two sides of a family, the Pandavas and the Kauravas, are preparing for battle. The text itself is positioned around a conversation between two characters. They are Krishna and Arjuna. Like many other writings of this period, such as the Upanishads and Dhammapada, the Bhagavad Gita, or Song of the Lord, seems somewhat timeless. The fact that it's relevant whether we lived in 1,000 years ago or we are living in the modern age. We explore what happens when Arjuna has to make life changing, different, difficult decisions. Specifically, the decision as to whether he should battle against his own family members in a war of good versus evil, and the importance of living a life of truth and purpose. The most interesting and often misunderstood aspect of the Bhagavad Gita is that it's entirely representational and highly symbolic. There is no real battlefield or fight to be won. The entire text is a representation of the battle that goes on in our minds and is an invaluable way to understand how we can overcome difficulty, self doubt, and ultimately how to live a life of truth and purpose. The Bhagavad Gita is entirely representational and highly symbolic. Whether you're an ancient yogi or a modern day practitioner, this text speaks to anyone who ever feels as though their mind in battlefield. The characters. In order to get the most from the text, it's important to understand what each character represents. Arjuna. He is like us in our human form, with all our doubts, worries, and habits. He represents you and I as we stand on the battlefield of life, facing all the different parts of ourselves that prevent us from realizing our true nature. Krishna, the higher self or divine, the Pandavas, the great virtues within us, the Kauravas, the opposing forces within us, the chariot, our physical body, the horses, our five senses that need to be skillfully guided and controlled by the self in order for us to be able to realize our true nature. Less drama, more dharma. The pages of the Bhagavad Gita delve into the aspect of dharma, which translates as that which upholds and is often known as life purpose. Young graduates are regularly encouraged to find their passion and then to pursue their dreams. This advice, which is regularly dished out at graduation ceremonies, is actually misguided. Most successful young people don't look inside and then plan a life. They don't take an inward journey and come out having discovered a developed self ready to meet the challenges of the world. No, living allows them to find themselves by confronting challenges in life, by finding a problem that summons their energies. They discover what they are capable of and what is important to them. In other words, our potential or purpose manifests not through a process of cognition, but through our vital engagement with the world. The purpose of the life. Whatever we might consider our life purpose to be, there is one purpose we all have: to live life fully, to explore all there is to explore within and without ourselves. And as Siddhartha Gautama said, to discover your world and with all your heart, give yourself to it. Whatever we might consider our life purpose to be, there is one purpose we all have: to live life fully, to explore all there is, and then to pursue their dreams. This advice, which is regularly dished out at graduation ceremonies, more naturally, we have to take an inward journey. No, living allows them to find themselves by confronting challenges in life, by finding a problem that summons their energies. They discover what they are capable of and what is important to them. In other words, our potential or purpose manifests not through a process of cognition but through our vital engagement with the world. Life can often seem like a battlefield, but it's also spoken of as a drama in many of the texts. And when we look at it this way, we can talk ourselves. Am I playing my part fully? Are we each giving ourselves to our life and our world and living our purpose fully? The Bhagavad Gita encourages us to live with purity, strength, discipline, honesty, kindness, and integrity in order to find our purpose and to live it fully. Just as Krishna encourages Arjuna to cast aside all doubts and trust in his highest self, we too can use the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita to meet our own difficulties and decisions with fearlessness and honesty and learn to live life authentically and fully. Let us find out beyond good and bad. Bhagavad Gita does not strictly fall in the realm of good and bad. If it were so, then it would not be a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. Arjuna was already a good man, and his problem was, in fact, because of his goodness. Gita dwells with the region of knowledge that is beyond the paths of opposite, the good and the bad, the right and the wrong. Gita is not a religious text but a spiritual advice. Where all the religions end, spirituality begins. When man has followed the right code of conduct, then alone he is ready for spirituality. This is true of all the Upanishads that are called Vedanta, mean end of the Vedas. Bhagavad Gita is also called Upanishad for the same reason. Krishna introduces a concept of life as a spectrum. The lower end is the material plant, the body, and the upper end is the consciousness, that Atman. It is up to us to identify with the body or consciousness. When we identify with the body's nature will always be mounting on us. The body has a constant fear of death. At the level of consciousness, we are continuous. Whether the body is a child, adult, or old, consciousness is still the same. When we look at a flower, we see that it comes and goes. But when we look at flowering, it is ever present, season after season. And let us take the message of Gita in the right spirit and be ready to deal with life appropriately. The war on ego. The war on ego seems to be gaining popularity in some spiritual circles. Within this context, the ego is basically your identification with your physical life and all its trappings, including your name, your personal history, your career, your relationships, and your current life situation. The ego is how most people choose to identify themselves. A smarter approach. Instead of trying to disidentify from the ego, we need to embrace the ego while merging it with a sense of oneness. We need to be aware of our individual identities while simultaneously developing an expanded sense of global consciousness. Then we need to make sure both of these levels of awareness are aligned. If you find your life riddled with problems and you seem to be experiencing an unreasonable or unfair amount of resistance when trying to build momentum, consider that the culprit may be that you are working against a larger body of humanity. If you are living as a parasite, it's reasonable to expect the larger body to treat you as such. श्रीकांताय कल्याण निधे निधेन्द्राम श्री वेंकटनिवासाय श्रीनिवासाय मंगलम मंगलाशास्त्र प्रेमदाचार्य पुरोगमैः सर्वेश पूर्वैराचार्यै सत्कृतायास्तु मंगलम्.